Wednesday, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our August coffee break. This coffee break is actually really interesting to me because I feel like as we age through, I won't say age, as we progress through our journeys in life, right? You find yourselves with a lot of people, especially if you know fellow entrepreneurs, they're always looking for someone to be on their board, or you get asked to join a board. And oftentimes we sign ourselves up for stuff that we really just don't know what we're getting into till we get in there. So this is going to be a really great session facilitated today just to talk about how to choose that board seat and what things you need to be thinking about. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting for everyone. But I always like to take a moment to introduce our team so that way if you see us out and about in the community, you can put a name with a face. Our president and CEO is Dr. Frederica Singletary. Our fractional CHRO is LaCosta Moore. Our senior director of marketing, communications, and engagement is Courtney Martin. And I am Dr. K, Dr. Kitiana Lowe, and I am the director of programs and events here at WeBEC ORV. And then our certification team, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, led by our director of certification and outreach, Colleen Russell, our certification manager, Robbie Moore, and then down here at the end, we have a certification specialist, Anita Steele. And then on our corporate side is our corporate engagement manager, Devin Davis. And then the one who keeps us all together, glued well and moving in the right direction is our administrative assistant, Morgan McDonald. So we are a mighty team who work diligently to do all things that you all need in terms of business development, programs and events, and corporate engagement. And then I'd also like to take a moment quickly to thank our 2026 Champion Circle members. This is a sponsorship offering that we had this year for both our corporates and WBEs. Because of their generous donations, we're able to put together programs such as this one free of charge. So definitely thankful to all of our sponsors who help me do all that I do. And then without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to Carrie Mollard, and she is the founder and CEO of Mollard Consulting. Carrie, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so you can share your screen and you can take it over from there. I actually wasn't sharing my screen. Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Yes, there we
You
go.
are.
you're doing great.
There we go.
Super. Well, good morning, everybody. Let me. All right. Did that transition over
Yeah.
okay? Can
Yes,
everyone
it
see?
did. Perfect.
So nice to be with you this morning. Um, excuse me. Just a brief bit about me. I am a certified governance consultant by Board Source. I started Mollard Consulting 23 years ago in 2003, which sounds crazy to think that 2003 was 23 years ago.
It's true.
But we love conversations like today. And so I want today to be very informal. We'll have like a formal Q&A at the end, but at any point, please ask me questions. We love these types of conversations. So our discussion today is going to be about getting energized with a cup of coffee since our theme is coffee break. I am a tea drinker, so mine is a cup of tea. But we want meaningful conversation. We're hoping to help you think about how to align your passion, skills, and expertise, how to maximize your impact through community leadership, and then thinking about board service. And I should also say nonprofit board service. So our expertise is in nonprofit board governance. Corporate board service is, a different animal, right? And so today we're talking about nonprofit board service, but how that can benefit you both personally and professionally. So first we'll start with the level set about the case for purposeful service. But Sarah and Ryan, let me ask you, are you serving on a nonprofit board now?
Nope.
Yeah, I am on three nonprofit boards.
Oh my goodness, Ryan.
Two faith-based, one community-based.
Okay. Three's a lot.
Yeah,
It's a
too
lot.
many.
Yeah. So I will tell you, we recommend no more than two. So three is a lot. So Sarah, have you thought about doing it, but just didn't know where to begin, or tell me a little bit about?
Yeah, I've always thought that I'd love to be able to do it. And we launched our firm 3 years ago, and so it's been in like the hustle of startup mode, and now that that's changing, but we've grown quite a bit, and I feel like we have more resources now to support the business where I can allocate a little bit of extra time
Good.
on a board seat. So I've just been thinking about it.
Good. So let's dive into kind of a reality check with some myths here. So myth number one that we hear often is that someone says to me, well, they need to be an expert to serve. And we always say, no, that's not true, right? The truth is your professional skills, connections, and ideas and smarts are what's needed now. So, you know, the two of you and anyone who listens to this recording afterwards, you have gifts to give. And it's interesting to me, we often find women more than men get very nervous about saying, but I'm not an expert in something. You have gifts to give. You have knowledge, you have skills, you have a world of experience and a lived experience to share. So another myth is I don't have time, so Sarah, like getting your business started. And so that's where we would say, yes, the truth though is finding the right board fit. So for instance, if you have a very little amount of time to give, then don't join a board that's a startup or an all volunteer organization with no paid staff, right? That's going to be a much higher demand on your time than a more mature board and organization. Another myth, I wasn't invited. I don't know the right people. And so consider this your invitation. I would love to see you serving on boards and giving of your time. You don't have to be in the know with, it's kind of an old conventional wisdom that, these kind of power brokers in whatever communities you operate in, that they're the ones who, go from board to board to board. The truth is that, we're here to help you. Others in your community are here to help you. Nonprofits need you. And so if you, raise your hand and say, I'm willing to serve, then we'll be able to help you and others will help you to find that spot. Any questions for me on those? So let's talk a little bit about kind of the challenge of now, the unprecedented needs. So nonprofits are meeting deep community needs. And in this moment, starting last year in 2025, with the cuts in federal policy or changes in federal policy, cuts in federal spending, the changes and the shifts and the cuts are so massive that the sector has not seen this level since the 1960s war on poverty, when the federal government flooded communities with dollars, flooded nonprofits with dollars to try to combat poverty. And that's when we saw the explosion in nonprofits in the 70s and 80s, through to today, primarily starting in the human service area and then growing. But that's the level of magnitude of the funding cuts, policy shifts that the sector is facing. So it's really massive. And so in terms of these issues of now, no one can solve these alone. Not a government entity, not a single nonprofit, not a chief executive, not a philanthropist, not an employer. We must do this together. And we fundamentally believe board governance is everything and leadership matters. So a nonprofit, starts out as a corporation, right? You first incorporated, and then you go to the IRS for tax exempt status. The IRS says, yes, we will give you that tax exempt status, but in return, you must have a board made up of independent people, independent of business and familial relationships. And that's how you will govern. That's how you'll stay connected to the community. And so in a nonprofit organization, if the board governance structure is broken, if there's any fracturing of the relationship between the board and the chief executive or among board members themselves, it takes a very difficult job and makes it that much harder. And so as a consulting firm, a women-owned consulting firm, we started to invest more and more into nonprofit board governance because what we found is when organizations have that figured out well and it's functioning well, then they can raise more money. They can execute on a strategic plan. They can have, better programmatic impact. And so for us, it's everything. And so again, love the fact that you're here to talk about this today. So, often we hear about, you guys are in business, ROI, right? Return on investment. But the return on investment in a nonprofit is not financial. It's relational. You're going to build new networks and meet new people. It's impactful. You're going to use your skills to solve real problems. It's developmental. You will develop as a leader. There's all sorts of research that cites nonprofit board service builds leadership skills because you're going to be networking with different people. You're going to be thinking different, problem solving different. You're going to be thinking about the community. It's personal, right? Is there a cause or a community that you care deeply about, and that's going to fill you up? And then it's reputational. It's you and your small business or your employer are at the table doing really important work alongside others also doing that work. So from our perspective, the ROI is like this: relational, impactful, developmental, personal, and reputational is not seen anywhere else in society. And so for us, it's just such a wonderful thing to do as a business owner, as a professional in your field. So what does a board do? So that was the quick case for why it matters. But what does a board do? There are 10 roles and responsibilities of nonprofit board service. We don't have time today to go through all 10, but all 10 bubble up into one of three functions. It's either about setting direction and strategy, providing oversight, or ensuring resources. So Ryan, you mentioned you're on multiple boards. Think about one of your last board meetings. Did the conversation bubble up to these higher level governance things? Were you talking strategy? Were you talking resources and oversight? Or in your experience, did conversations kind of get into the weeds of operations?
Yeah, we're so with one of the boards, the our group, it's such a small nonprofit that yeah, we're in the day-to-day detail of personnel, budget to actual. The higher one, the other two that I'm on, it's really direction and strategy, resource allocation. And unfortunately, we had someone get incarcerated. So
Oh, goodness.
yeah, it's I'm right in the middle of it right now. That's why when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, like yeah, what do we do? Like any
Holy
pointers, any
moly.
help, I mean, so
Yeah.
we have like we've got good legal counsel, we've got all that stuff, but yeah, when we're doing when I've been a part of really helpful, successful ones, we've been more focused on this and less in the weeds. And yeah, it's been really good on the two in particular. So
Yeah. So there's a push and pull that can happen where, again, if it's a very small nonprofit, like you're saying, and there's no staff or one staff, the board can start to take more of a management approach. But we want you to think about that as the exception, not the rule. The
mhm.
board is supposed to stay at a strategic governance level. The chief executive stays at a management level. The board governs, the executive director runs the organization. They manage, they do operations. And so, Sarah, as you think about your first board service, you want to ask the question, what do board meetings look like? What kind of conversation and discussion is there? If the board discussion is very one directional, meaning it's just report outs. The executive director gives a report out, committees give a report out. You look at last month's minutes, you look at last month's financials. That is the sign of kind of an immature board, meaning they haven't evolved beyond the perfunctory work of a board. You want a board meeting to be dynamic. You want there to be a strategic topic that everybody's diving into. Nobody wants to go to a meeting and sit and listen to report outs. It's just a complete waste of everybody's time. So you could ask these questions, Sarah, like, does your board focus on strategy? What does oversight look like to you? Tell me about your business model. How does the board help ensure resources? And this will be a good litmus test to see if the board is operating at a higher functioning level, or are they still kind of in a rudimentary mode. And hi, Kenton, welcome to the webinar. We have here on this slide the three legal duties. So Ryan, you mentioned someone's been incarcerated. So the roles and responsibilities here, this is what boards must do. But this is also what boards must be aware of. So if an organization is going to be sued because of some ethical, criminal issue. These are the legal standards upon which a board is sued. So duty of care literally means board members have to care. They have to do what's reasonable in terms of stewardship. Read materials in advance of a meeting, show up at a meeting, ask good and timely questions, engage in the life and health of the organization. Duty of loyalty is no self-gain. A nonprofit board member cannot be paid. A nonprofit board member cannot gain financially from their service on the board. It doesn't mean that you're not networking. It doesn't mean that, you might meet someone that becomes a future customer of your business. Like that's kind of just normal professional networking. But you can't gain by being that board member, right? You can't gain financially. You can't cash in the fact that you're serving the ABC board, right? And duty of obedience then is that the public can trust you. Are you fulfilling the mission? Are you beyond reproach, or are there ethical or sometimes even illegal things happening? And is that causing a breach of trust in the community? So care, loyalty, and obedience. Certain states have additional legal duties. I'm based in Ohio. Ohio has a fourth duty called duty to maintain accounts, which basically means the board is required to ensure the organization has good management practices, bank accounts and insurance policies and all that kind of just good business practices. So in whatever state you're operating in, you'll want to see if there's additional state duties, but these are the three that come from the IRS. In terms of leadership, the single most important relationship in any nonprofit is that relationship between the board and the chief executive. That relationship matters the most, and that is a fundamental role of the board. The board chooses the chief executive. And so when an executive director or a CEO, whatever their title is, leaves, the board is responsible for replacing that person. So see if you can guess, what percentage of women do you think serve as nonprofit chief executives?
22%.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 6.
Okay. So this may not surprise you. It depends on the budget size. More women run smaller nonprofits, but as the complexity and the budget grows, more men are running them. And this chart shows also about persons of color. And so it's really interesting. The sector is dominated by women in the workforce, but the larger and more complex boards tend to hire men to run them. So it's just good reminder about gender and race and ethnicity. And as a board member, are you thinking strategically, or are you falling into some biases in terms of who gets hired? And it is a board responsibility. So this chart to us is really, really fascinating. Next here that we'll just talk about a little bit about our philosophy on board governance. So first of all, board members plus the chief executive equal partnership. That is everything. When the board and the chief executive have power parity and there isn't a out of whack power dynamic, the board is driving and treating the chief executive like an office manager, or the chief executive is driving and is like holding the board over there, like I'm going to keep them at arm's length. Neither of those extremes are healthy. The board and the chief executive must come together to drive the organization forward. And so again, Sarah, as you're interviewing and thinking about what board to serve on, a question is, tell me about the relationship between the board and the chief executive. We want it to be healthy, trusted, collegial, kind, respectful. If there's a fracture there, if there's tension there, that could be a red flag for some issues. We also want board members to be seen as a strategic asset. We want chief executives and staff members to see the board as their partner. That when a board is seen, perceived and treated as an asset, then you get more board engagement. Then you get deeper problem solving. And that's kind of like when the traction and the magic happens, is the board understands their role and they're diving into solving problems. Board membership is leadership development. I shared this earlier. There's a lot of research that shows people who serve on nonprofit boards grow as leaders. So it's really important to just call it out and be mindful of it. And for you to say, yes, I would like to join this board, and here's how I would like to grow as a leader. I would like to learn more about X in our community, or I would love to join, the marketing and communications committee because I really want to grow in my strengths there, or whatever that is. That's not self-gain. That's just ensuring that everyone has shared expectations, and you growing as a leader is not only good for you and your business, it's good for the nonprofit as well. Board culture equals everything else. I'm sure you've heard the Peter Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. The culture of the board really impacts the operations and work of the board. It impacts the composition of the board, and it impacts, effectiveness as well. The chief executive equals mission impact. The chief executive carries on his or her shoulders the mission. They oversee operations and programs. Is this organization fulfilling its mission? Are they achieving the impact that they intend? That is the chief. And so when the chief sees the board as a strategic asset and the board sees the chief as the driver of mission impact, again, we're going to get that power parity and together moving the organization forward. And then lastly, power dynamics, which is something every board must name. There in human life, right? There's always power dynamics in your workplace, in your family, in your community, right? Sometimes there's power brokers, sometimes there's bullies, sometimes there's just well-meaning people, but they have a last name that everybody knows, so they kind of defer to them more. Or maybe they've got a position in the community. But it's really helpful if the board can name, okay, what are the dynamics at play in our organization? Are we cognizant of them? Can we mitigate any of them? Is there any harm because of them? Or is it something that we just are all aware of and that we manage? I'll pause here real quick. Any questions for me on this?
Seems to make sense.
Great. So let's talk about now, how do you find a path forward? What is your action plan for about joining a board? So the most important question isn't which board to join, it's why you want to serve. And I'm going to walk through a series of 4 questions. And what we have found is when individuals can check all 4 boxes, then that is a deeply meaningful board place, not placement, but appointment or service, right? If you only get 1 or 2 of the 4 that we're going to talk about, it might be okay. It might end up feeling more like an obligation than meaningful. It might feel more like a task, or you're just kind of there in name only. And we see that a lot, like people there in name only. They're checking a box. They feel it's like the right thing to do professionally is to join the ABC nonprofit board in their community, so they're just there. They're there in name only, right? They're not really engaged. So we're going to walk through these 4. So the first one that I want you to think about, your personal why. What is the cause or community that you care deeply about that's really aligned with your passion? So for me, I've had, too many in my family that I have lost to cancer, and too many people in my life who are living with cancer. So the cause that I care deeply about is related to cancer. Um, I do here in Central Ohio, there's a bike ride called Pelotonia. It's a ride for cancer research fundraising. I've done it now for 13 years. It fills me up, right? I'm doing a little part to help create a cancer-free world. So for me, that's deeply meaningful. And even as busy as I get, I do the ride, right? So what is that cause for you? Is it youth? Is it elderly? Is it the arts or animals or the environment? Is there a cause that you care deeply about? Now, some people will say to me, Carrie, there's many things I care about. I care about the homeless, and I care about, arts and culture, and, I care about all the things. So just focus in on if there was only one cause that you were going to devote time, effort, resources to, can you narrow it down to one? It doesn't mean that you don't aren't interested in other things. And if that's too hard to narrow it down to one, then I want you to think about a community. Serving on like a United Way board that is serving a geographic region, or your alma mater that serves, the community of where you went to school. Sometimes focusing on a community that serves multiple causes is more meaningful to someone. You grew up in a certain neighborhood and you want to join a board that is dedicated to improving that neighborhood. So if it's too hard to narrow down to a cause, can you narrow down to a community? But I really want you to get really, really focused. Often with women, more than I hear it from women more than I hear it from men. They have a really hard time with this narrowing down. And so, Ryan, you talked about serving on 3 boards. There was this woman I was talking to who was doing volunteer activity and board service. But she really wanted to do this new board thing. And I said to her, well, now you need to let go of these other things because it'll be too much. Oh, I can't do that. I love them, right? And it was like, it doesn't mean that you can't stop loving them. It doesn't mean you stop donating to them. But it's okay to say no to other things when we say yes to something new. So that's the first why. The second one is, when you serve on a board, you're giving back to the community with your time and your resources, money and time. So I want you to have a very honest conversation first with yourself. Then if you have a spouse or a partner or someone in your life that you help that makes decisions with you, how much money and time do you have to give? And when we can reflect internally, and then whoever's closest in your life, then you can narrow down board service opportunities. Because, I gave that example in the beginning. If it's an all volunteer nonprofit with no paid staff, they're going to ask a lot of your time. And if you don't have that much time to give, just be honest and say, that's not the right opportunity for me. If it's a nonprofit who's about to do a capital campaign and you can't make a gift at that level, it's not the right time to serve that nonprofit. So the more honest we can be upfront with how much you can give, the better you're going to be able to make that decision. And sometimes it's not a no forever. It's a not now. In this phase in my life or in this phase in my business, I only have this much to give. Now, 10 years from now, it may be very different. But I promise you, being very honest up front with this one is going to help avoid issues and circumstances that you may find yourself in and you think, oh my God, how do I get out of this? The third one is, what is your expertise? What is your skill? What is your unique skill set? And does the organization need that? So the example I often give is if you're a lawyer and that board already has 2 or 3 other lawyers on the board, they may not need your skill. So it's you reflecting on what is your deep gift in terms of knowledge, skills, abilities, and then ensuring that the board you want to join needs that knowledge, skill, ability, expertise. And I want on this one, and again, many times we hear it from women and they say, I'm not an expert in anything. And we want to like temper that. Everybody has a gift. And think strategically, like for your business, have you led all of the planning since you started the business? Well, you've got a gift in planning. Are you an outstanding administrator? Then you've got a gift in management. So it isn't always credentialed things like an accountant or a lawyer. And sometimes we fall into those traps. Well, I don't have a CPA. Doesn't mean that you're not really gifted at financial management or financial analysis. I mean, show me any small business owner. Oh my gosh, we can run cash flow projections till the cows come home. So really getting clear here on what are your gifts and then getting comfortable expressing what those gifts are. Then the last one is back on this personal and professional growth and development. You will grow in your leadership skills. Does that align with your employer or your business, your personal goals? Where do you want to grow? If your business is in the environmental sector, then finding a nonprofit in the environmental sector might be absolutely perfect for you. Or no, maybe there's something upstream that impacts the environment and you want to join, something in that sector. But, again, thinking strategically about your priorities for your business, your priorities for where you want to grow, and then aligning that, again, that is not self-gain. That is strategic decision making. So these are the four that we want you to be able to think deeply about. And if you don't get a yes on all four of these, it's okay to say that's not the right board for me right now. And maybe in 6 months there'll be another opportunity that comes along. I'll pause here. Questions for me on these?
Just a quick comment. I really agree with you about like where are you most passionate to help? Because there's just times where the work is I don't want to say inconvenient, but
Yeah,
sometimes it is. It's just like, wait, why are we doing this again? And if you're really aligned with passion, I agree with you. I think it's really helpful. We have one that we're doing where one group I'm a part of, basically act like a bank to places that can't get traditional home loans because the district has been redlined in the city of Buffalo. And so
yeah,
like M&T Bank or HSBC Bank, they won't lend to them, Key Bank. And so we say, okay, well, we can lend to you. We have a group of private donors who can provide you with a mortgage and we'll act as a mini bank. And it's very challenging at times, just to finance it and to, do credit checks but it's really worth it when you're able to hand someone the keys to a home that otherwise, no bank would lend to them, and you're
that's
like,
right.
hey, we can do this a couple times a year. So anyway, I'm with you
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. And there aren't days where you're not going to be like, oh, I don't have time for this, right? Because we're all human and we get busy. But
Mhm.
over the arch of your experience there, if it's filling your cup because you care about that, if you find meaning in that service and in that work, then it will not feel like a chore or an obligation over the arc of your service, right? Again, we might all have bad or busy days, but
Mhm.
if you're just there because you feel like you should, and you're interested, but it isn't deeply meaningful, then it becomes more obligation than joy. Yep. And, we are all incredibly busy. We don't have time to waste on things that aren't going to be meaningful. We want to find purpose. And so making sure the alignment there. And the one about the time and the money, I gave that example of a capital campaign. I talked to a new board member one time, this was years ago, and he said, oh, how did he phrase it? He said something like, I feel like he didn't, it's an old school word of hoodwinked, but like he felt a little like surprised, that they did a kind of a, you know, um, a kind of a trick on them. They never told him they were embarking on a capital campaign.
Oh.
And it was at the first board meeting when they announced the fundraising goal. And he was like, what? And he just felt like it was sneaky. And that set off his service in a really negative light. So having the conversations up front are just so healthy. Okay. So you've made this decision. You've gone through these four and you're like, okay, I've narrowed it down. The animal shelter in my community has, I can support them. I've got the time and the resources and it aligns with where I want to go. Okay. The animal shelter it is. So now what is the due diligence that I want you to do when you've narrowed it down? The first thing is one, experience the mission. Meet with leaders, volunteer before you say yes to joining the board, download their annual report, follow them on social media. Get to know, you've narrowed it down and you believe it's the animal shelter. But before you say yes, Really see if these are the people and the work that you really feel connected to. Um, Again, something as simple as following them on social media is going to be really insightful. How do they talk about the work? Go have coffee with the executive director, meet with the board chair. If it's right now it's kind of back to school time and, stuff the backpack fundraising or not fundraising, volunteer activities. And if it's that nonprofit you're interested in, go help stuff backpacks and talk to the other people stuffing backpacks. Do you like them? Do you feel like that's a group of people that you would click with? So one is experience the mission. Number two, understand the business model. What drives the economic engine? In nonprofit, there's two revenue sources. One is contributed income, which is philanthropy. The other is earned income, which is contracts, fees for services, admissions. Um, every nonprofit is going to have a ratio of earned to contributed income. If the ratio is like 4 to 1, contributed, meaning philanthropy and fundraising, to 1 earned, that's going to tell you that there's going to be demands on you to help with fundraising. If the ratio is very different, if it's 10 to 1 earned income to contributed income, that tells you there's a lot of fees for services or third-party payors or contracts, dollars coming in that are not about fundraising. And so those are two very different board experiences. So what drives the economic engine? What drives the impact engine? Is this organization sophisticated? Do they use evidence-based practices? Do they, document outcomes? Do they have good data dashboards? Are they accredited by some other agency? That's going to give you a sense of how mature and how serious the organization is from an operating standpoint. The third bullet there is, are they in debt? Are they in debt because they bought a building and they have a mortgage and maybe they can carry that debt load and it's perfectly good and fine? Or are they in debt up to their eyeballs because they're relying on a line of credit because they every year they don't balance their budget? That's a very different scenario. Has a board member ever made a loan? That's that's a red flag. So understand the business model in terms of what drives the budget, what drives the impact, and is there debt? And is the debt like good debt, or is it structurally like there's a problem here kind of debt? The third one is once again clarifying expectations so that everybody's on the same page for how much time, how many meetings a month do you have to go to? Is it 1 meeting a month? Is it 4 meetings a month? Or is it 1 meeting a quarter? Is it every other month? How much money? And again, what are those expectations for you on fundraising? I'm not trying to belabor that point too much, but we just see it as it becomes an issue later if it isn't discussed up front. Any questions
I
for me here?
I just want to amen everything you just said on understanding the business model and the clarifying expectations. Can I give two examples? Because I just
Sure.
think it's
Yeah.
okay. So the business model, oh, this one hurts my head, but we had an organization that I would say I was duped into joining. I was an executive leader at a other nonprofit. They wanted me to help them, and it was an immediate, hey, can you finance $250,000 from your group to fix our boiler and our AC system? It's a 60,000 square foot building, behemoth in downtown Buffalo. It's a beautiful building, but the reality was the vision and the mission of the organization was no longer as big as the physical building,
Got it.
right? Like it just, and we had to make a really hard decision, which was we were one, that boiler, if it fully broke, we were insolvent. And so I felt like it was a gift from God because it was a business developer said, I really like this building. I know it's riddled with asbestos. I know it's got lots of problems. I will give you $2 million to walk away today if you let me buy this building. And so it was like, wow, this is great, but what would we actually do? And the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo was like so helpful. They helped us set up a donor advised trust where we
Yep.
could do annual like we do annual giving campaigns every year now of like about $200,000. And
Amazing.
yeah, and it was hard to say goodbye to the
Yeah.
building because there were so many great
Right.
memories but
Right.
the legacy of what was youth time, that was the organization, it was going to die if we went and took this huge bridge loan out that we were never going to be
Yeah.
able to pay back.
Right.
And then the last thing on financial commitment, like if you're going into a board, it and again, you've crushed it. Like everything you've said, I'm like, yes.
Mhm.
They're going to ask for financial help, and you
Yeah.
just kind of have to get in the mindset of they're going to want you to join your team, and you just have to be ready to say I'm willing to do that or I'm not. But this slide in particular is like nailed it, with what I've experienced so far.
Good. Good. Oh, thank you for that, Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, we've just seen it over and over again, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Is it fair to ask during that process if you know that they're going to ask for financial help, like what the expectation is like? It is so
yes.
that you just know
Yes. Yes.
going
And so
into it.
totally, Sarah. So some boards have a minimum give.
Okay.
You've got to give 10,000 or more, or whatever the number is. Some boards have a give or get 10,000, meaning if you can't write that check, go out and raise it. That's no longer
Mhm.
considered best practice, by the way, give or get. Um,
Interesting.
Minimum give is no longer considered best practice either, but it's a holdover from the past. Best practice today is that the organization should say to you, we're going to ask you to give a gift that's personally meaningful to you.
Oh, great.
We're going to ask, right? We're going to ask you to put this organization in your top 3 philanthropic priorities. So most Americans give to their house of worship and to their alma mater. So that third would be the nonprofit that you serve on.
Got it. Okay.
So my friend Andy Davis, who used to be at Board Source, people would say to him, okay, Andy, how do you define a personally meaningful gift? And his answer is it should be a number large enough that you're afraid to tell your spouse or partner, right?
Fair enough.
Right. And so if it's like $50, that's not personally meaningful. Like if that's a throwaway gift,
Yeah,
but for your family, is the big number 500? Is that big number 5,000? Like whatever that number is, that's personally meaningful.
got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, and they've also probably wealth screened you too. Believe it or not, that a lot of times they know your margin to give, or like at least they've got a score that of what they think you can give. And so sometimes that just know there are many that have
Sometimes.
done their homework, not always, but many
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. But that's why talking about it up front is just so important.
For sure.
Um, and I'm sorry. I went too far ahead here. So, what you have to offer, I mentioned everybody has gifts to give. You have things to bring to the table. This can be intimidating for someone if you are talking to an organization and no one else on the board looks like you. Maybe they're all older, maybe they're different, maybe they're all, men or all women or whatever it is, or ethnicity and race and your lived experience. Sometimes it's very intimidating. And as nonprofits seek to diversify their boards, if you are in the minority of that board composition, it can be very intimidating. And so we don't have to do it now, but I always want to offer if talking about your gifts and your expertise and skills is intimidating to you, we're welcome to practice it now together, or you're welcome to put it in the chat if you want to play with it, or if you want to talk to me after the Zoom. But I always want to leave the space for if this is a barrier for you with joining a nonprofit board, I want to help reduce that barrier. So if you would like to practice, you're welcome to it, or if not, that's no problem too. We'll move on, but no, if you want to talk afterwards too, happy to talk through it. So this is just about, again, your passion, what is your interest? Your profession equals alignment. When you can match with a cause or a community that you care deeply about, that is the heart of purposeful board service. And then now, the floor is yours. What other questions do you have for me?
Harry, I'm in the recruiting industry, and I know there are a lot of search firms that specialize in board placement, and I know the large majority are on the corporate side, but I'm curious if you would ever use a search firm for a nonprofit board.
All the
It,
yes, typically search firms are used for the chief executive of the nonprofit. But there are re search firms used for recruitment occasionally. So there's Alice Korngold in New York is a really big one. We at Millard Consulting, we have a program called Board Building, where we help identify board talent and make matches to nonprofits. So yes, there are services that absolutely help nonprofits recruit candidates. Um, More often than not, the board relies on its own like circles of
network,
influence,
yeah.
right? Oh, I golf
Getting
with
a
this guy,
seat
he'd be
for a
great.
nonprofit unpaid position, I get
Totally.
could be hard. So
Yeah, but there are times, I mean, there's a couple out of New York that are very expensive,
yeah,
that help find candidates. Our program we call Board Building. It helps nonprofits identify those gaps on their board, and it helps individuals identify the good fit, those 4 questions we went through, and other metrics, so that it's a meaningful fit. Our fees are right, they're very low. It's more about building community. But there is a whole gamut in this space, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
Once you feel like you'd like to learn more about a specific nonprofit's board, what's the first step? Like if I am really interested in, helping childhood bullying,
Yep.
and I do research and I'm in Cincinnati and I find something that seems interesting, what would you recommend as kind of the first
Hmm.
step?
Yeah. So I would meet with a leader, either a board member or the chief executive,
Okay.
and reach out and say, I'm interested in the organization. I've been to your gala before, or I have volunteered with you before, or let them know that you have experienced the mission in some way, and I would love to meet to talk about board service. And this would be a telling if they welcome that, or if they're like, oh no, we're good. That will be a very telling conversation. They should welcome it. And
Okay.
so meeting with someone on the board or meeting with the chief executive to have that conversation and begin the process. They may say to you, we have no openings on the board right now, but we will next year. And that's a totally fine answer, right? There should be term limits. I mean, term limits are a best practice. So every year there should be some people rolling off the board. So if they say to you, oh, Sarah, we'd love to meet, but just know we wouldn't have an opening on the board till next July, they're not putting you off. That may very well be true. But
Sure.
that means then maybe you join a committee, right? And in fact, there are some nonprofits who require potential board members to join committees first before they join the board. So you can say, great, I welcome joining the finance committee or, the program committee. And so start to build that relationship, but reaching out to a leader, and finding out more about their process and when do they have openings and what kind of committees do they have. There should be a committee opportunity for a non-board member to join. And then you can really continue to see if it's a good fit.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions for me? All right. Dr. K, we will bring it back to you. Our contact info here is here in terms of Millard Consulting, and buildingabetterboard.com is our board building program. We do a monthly e-newsletter, so feel free to sign up for our newsletter and follow us on face on oh my goodness, not on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Facebook, old school, but
Right.
we publish weekly on LinkedIn.
Going totally full circle in our conversation.
I know.
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
started, we were talking about rolling coins, Dr. K. So yeah, so LinkedIn is where we have our presence now.
I heard they say MySpace is coming back just for those who are actually
Oh
old
my
enough to
gosh,
Oh,
know about it. I don't
MySpace,
no.
know if it's true or not, but that's what they say.
MySpace.
No, this has been so, so good and chock full of so much information. Carrie, thank you so much just for
You're welcome.
sharing and your willingness to answer questions and things like that, because there's so much more that goes into a board besides just signing up because your best friend started this new business and now you want
Yep.
to be involved. And it's things that we don't think about. And Ryan, to you with, three boards. I've been board members and head of HOAs and all sorts of other things. And so my hat is off to you. It is a labor of love. And so thank you for your commitment, even though they're not my organizations. Thank you for your labor of love and for your commitment to those organizations. I'm sure they would not be able to do all that they do without you and the fellow board members, and to Kenton as well. So this has been really good. I am going to share my screen again. Here we go. As you all know, we always like to take a moment. We do believe that feedback is a gift. And so we always like to take a moment to ask if you have the ability to do so now, please pull out your phone and scan this QR code and fill out our brief survey, providing us feedback about the session. If for some reason you're not able to do it right now, that's fine. You will receive a copy of the recording, a copy of the deck, as well as there'll be a link to the survey as in that email as well. You'll be getting that in the next couple of days. So I always say, regardless of whether you do it now or whether you do it later, doesn't matter. Just please do it. So that way we have that feedback. And then also, I'd like to take a moment to talk about some of our upcoming events. So if you know anybody who is not certified with WeBank and they want some more information about being certified, we do have a webinar coming up on tomorrow on how to become a certified WBE. We do also have a webinar on August 19th, brought to you by our Women of Color program about how to get certified. And then for those who may be newly certified, we do have an onboarding session on August 20th. You can always scan this QR code. It will take you to our events page and you will see all of our events there. Ryan first was talking about, when he first came on, he was talking about Catch the Wave, which is August 24th and 25th in Louisville, Kentucky this year. If you are not already registered, registration closes this Friday. If you are already registered, thank you. Go and tell your friends that they need to get registered, and registration closes this Friday. You do not want to miss it. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be really great this year. We did Yes, it was announced. We did announce last week our trailblazer for this year is Cherie Devereaux. I believe is how you pronounce her last name. I'm pulling it up so I can look at it at the same time. If you are not familiar with her, and DeVoe, excuse me, not Devereaux, DeVoe, Cherie DeVoe. If you are not familiar with Cherie, so Cherie is actually the trainer of the winning horse from the 2026 Kentucky Derby. She is, I think, one of the maybe two, possibly three, I want to say, female trainers in the history of all of this, of all of, horse racing and things of that nature. So she is truly blazing the trail for herself and for, young women who, love horseback riding and training and things like that. So we're excited to be able to honor her as well as several other awardees during our Trailblazer dinner. And then, as you all know, we have a wealth of workshops and keynotes that will take place as well. So definitely, if you don't already have your ticket, make sure you get that. And then October 13th in Cincinnati, we're asking everybody to begin saving the dates. We do have a construction summit that will take place. And I always tell people this is not just for people who are in the construction space. If you own a marketing company, guess what? There's construction owners who need marketing. If you own a thinking of another WB I know who she does background checks and things like that. There are folks that need those services. So don't think just because you do not put on a hard hat and go out there to the construction site every day, that means you should not be there. You should definitely be there. So October 13th is an event that you don't want to miss. And then save the date for our annual meeting and year-end celebration, which will take place December 16th. Also, excuse me, in Mason, Ohio, so near Cincinnati as well. So just a couple of things that we have coming up. The latter part of the year, I can't believe that we're talking about the latter part of the year right now because I feel like it was just February. And now, theoretically speaking, this year is almost over. So
Crazy.
Awesome.
it's
Um,
crazy.
That
It's
is
crazy.
that's crazy.
I don't know if the years are just going by faster as I get older or what. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
time is just ticking, y'all. It's ticking.
yeah, that's crazy. Hey, real quick, I just want to
Yeah.
Carrie, I saw on your LinkedIn that you went to Indiana. My boss,
Yeah.
Molly, who's heavily involved in ORV, she went to Indiana. I don't think you all know each other. I would love to in
Oh,
Louisville.
connect
Like if
us.
you see me, I'd love to connect you both. I think that'd be really cool because yeah, it's a great school and yeah, you guys have a
Yeah.
connection. So
Yeah, I won't be at the Louisville conference,
okay,
sadly,
all right,
but feel free to connect
yeah,
us via
I'll do
email
so.
or LinkedIn. Yeah,
You
awesome.
got it. You got it. Awesome. And
What a
Sarah went to
small world.
Emory, the Harvard of the South,
Is
as
that
we
what they
call it.
say? It was long ago. I don't know about
A great
that.
school, phenomenal school.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
How did I
this was
not know
fun.
Molly was a
Cool.
Hoosier?
Yeah, Molly was a Hoosier. She's a Buckeye by birth, but a Hoosier by education.
Well, she had
So,
a good winter
yes, she
last
did.
football playoff season.
Yeah. Yeah. This was really good. I know I've only been to a few of these, but I just filled out a survey. Carrie, this is awesome.
Oh, good. Thank
Super
Yeah,
you.
cool. Yeah,
super helpful.
this was a great one. Thank you so
Great.
much.
You're
Really
Yeah.
welcome.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nice to
Yes.
spend a
Thank
little
you
time
all
this
for taking
morning.
your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all for taking your time
Have a good
today,
one.
and we'll see you at our next event.
Bye,
Yeah.
guys.